Luxury brand Genesis has anointed a new flagship in its mid-size SUV stable with the release of the Electrified GV70. Now, as the name suggests, this is strictly an EV range topper designed to take on the likes of the Mercedes-Benz EQC and the BMW iX3. Let's see how it matches up. The Electrified GV70 tops the 5-model mid-size SUV range from Genesis, armed with the sizable $43,000 premium over the Korean brand's existing flagship, the V6-powered 3.5T. As such, the electrified model lands in Oz at $127,800 plus on-road costs in a highly specified grade, aligning closely with offerings from BMW and Mercedes-Benz, and in the same ballpark as the slightly larger Audi e-tron. The Genesis Electrified GV70 is distinguished from its petrol and diesel stablemates by its aerodynamic grille finish, bespoke 20-inch alloys, tweaked bumper designs, and an inherent lack of exhaust outlets. Now, power here is sent to all 4 wheels via a pair of electric motors, one on each axle. So all told, you're getting 320 kilowatts and 605 Newton meters. However, there is a boost mode that facilitates bursts of up to 10 seconds. Now, that delivers 360 kilowatts and 700 Newton meters. So you can take advantage of that, and it correlates with a faster 0 to 100 time of 4.2 seconds. Now, the electrified GV70 is actually based on the same platform as the internal combustion GV70. That's a bit of a point of difference from other Hyundai and Genesis models, which are based on the brand's new EGMP platform. As we'll see inside, they impose a few spatial and packaging compromises, but compared to other electric vehicles, they're pretty minor in nature. As with many other emerging EVs, the electric GV70 also offers a vehicle load function, allowing you to charge or power up household items, laptops, camping gear, and more. The headline figure for charging is a claimed 18 minutes for 10 to 80% using a 350 kilowatt DC rapid fast charger. But the more relevant figure here is 12 hours from a home wall box, or as low as 7 hours using an 11 kilowatt AC charger connection. Now, one of the key points of difference between the Genesis GV70 and a lot of its key rivals is that everything you see inside the cabin here is standard. In fact, the only optional extra is $2,000 matte paint. As such, when you jump into a standard car, it really does impart a sense of luxury and occasion. And I guess it goes some way in justifying the pretty lofty purchase price of just under $130,000. I love all the key features, obviously a 14.5-inch center touchscreen display, a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster with an augmented reality function, and a head-up display. Now, while I'm rattling off some of the key specifications in the shiny brochure, this also has 18-way adjustable front driver and passenger seats with massaging function, cooling, and heating as standard. But what I like is that everything has been put in a really smart, clever way. It's functional and it's well presented as well. I guess the one thing that goes against all of that is that because this car isn't based on a dedicated EV platform, you do have a really bulky transmission tunnel and console here, and unlike a lot of other like-minded EVs, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 instantly springs to mind. There's none of that sort of clever ingenuity that electric cars are known for. The Ioniq 5 has a sliding console that you can set up to really tailor it to yourself. This just has a big, bulky transmission tunnel with no storage integrated. Apart from that though, it's a really nice place to spend time, and above all else, it's really comfortable. The interior space also includes an active noise control function, which uses microphones in the headlining to take away unwanted noise. The electrified GV70 ticks every box where infotainment is concerned. Likewise, safety gets the nod out of the box with every base covered. From the rear seat, I have to say I'm quite impressed with the electrified GV70's packaging, especially when you consider its 4.7 metre length. The leg room, head room, shoulder room is all identical with the internal combustion GV70. You just lose a little bit of floor space because it's been lifted to accommodate for the batteries. But with that said, engineers have actually removed the transmission tunnel in the rear, so there's not such a big compromise as what's in the front. But elsewhere, the proportions are strong, the presentation's really strong, and just some of the little minute details, the inclusions like the sunshades, like the stitching, the soft touch materials, the alloy finishes, it's a really nice place to spend time. I reckon it's really good for adults and kids alike. The window line's low enough so that little ones will still be able to see out, and I think it covers all the bases where comfort is concerned as well.
The rear seat space includes seat heating, air vent access and charging outlets, with ISOFIX attachment points on the outbound pews.
Probably the biggest spatial compromise in terms of packaging is in the boot area. It's 39 litres smaller than the regular petrol-powered and diesel-powered GV70, but against the petrol model particularly, it gets a space-saver spare tyre. This only gets a glue kit. And I think for a vehicle that's designed to traverse different surfaces, dirt roads and all the rest, you probably want a spare tyre. I know I would anyway. Otherwise, the boot area is quite handy. It's got a flat floor, you've got split folding seats, and of course you have the vehicle to load function. And it's quite a standalone, unique feature with this car. Other electric vehicles can charge small appliances and things like that. Genesis says that this one can actually run something as powerful as a washing machine. The boot loading area, it's quite easy to get stuff in and out of, and the aperture's quite big too. So you'll fit a couple of suitcases in there, no dramas at all. Okay, so with all of that in mind, it is clear the electrified GV70 has quite a bit going on in terms of its weight, in terms of its power, and in terms of all of its standard equipment. But when you do jump behind the wheel, it instantly imparts a sense of luxury, but also a strong sense of familiarity with the regular GV70. I think immediately the weight of this vehicle is quite present. It's only a couple of 100 kilograms over the most powerful 3.5 litre turbo V6 GV70, but it's just with the way that this car kind of traverses bumps, the way that it reacts to certain things, it does feel like a heavy car. That's not a slide on it, it still does everything quite well, but that's kind of the immediate observation. Otherwise, you're sitting a little bit higher in the cabin, about 16 millimeters higher than you would in an ICE car. And I have to say, all the tuning of the key controls is quite good. The throttle response is nice and linear. The brake pedal actually has quite a lot of feeling and feedback. It doesn't feel wooden in any way. I feel like we've moved on from those very first electric and hybrid cars. And just its day-to-day characteristics, I feel like you've got a great view of the open road. The rear window, the rear outlook is quite strong. You've got plenty of vision from the mirrors as well. But down to the driving experience, I'm quite a fan of it. It's very relaxed, and even with that, I guess 0 to 100 time, it's kind of the headline figure, 4.2 seconds. It doesn't feel overtly sporty. Instead, this feels like a pretty strong all-rounder. So day-to-day bumps, it soaks up things quite well with its primary ride. There's a little bit of lumpiness and jitteriness on little bumps in the road. But even with the big undulations in the road, it soaks those up nicely too. There's no excessive vertical movement. There's probably a little bit more than you might like. And I think of cars like the Audi e-tron. It's a slightly bigger car, but it does such a good job of suppressing bumps and really isolating you from what's happening underneath. This Genesis GV70, the electric version, is a step in that direction, but it's probably not quite as good as the Audi. But against its competitive set, cars like the Mercedes-Benz EQC, the BMW iX3, it feels pretty polished in its day-to-day demeanour. Of course, being electric, the cabin is quiet, and that is augmented by some of the technology inside the cabin. I've got these two studs in the front driver's seat. There's also two in the passenger seat, and they're actively working like noise-cancelling headphones, kind of filtering out all the bad noise and bringing in good sound waves to create a really calm and serene driving environment. And I feel like the electrified GV70 does execute that quite strongly and commendably. Now, in terms of dynamism, I mentioned the weight before. It is a constant consideration if you're driving in tight hairpins, but if you work to the strengths of this car, it moves its weight to the outside wheels quite admirably and neatly. There's no excessive body roll and pitch. And I think all in all, given the size of this car, its positioning and that weight, it actually does a pretty good job of kind of straddling ride and handling mix and dynamism as well. It's sporty enough without really kind of setting any new benchmarks. Just notice then a big undulation in the road. That's kind of the worst of the vertical movement. There's a lot of EVs at the moment that feel a little bit under suspended. It's probably more prominent in sedans and hatchbacks than SUVs. They tend to be a little bit better. This doesn't feel under suspended by any means, but yeah, it probably could be a little bit better at controlling some of that vertical movement. It sometimes takes an extra sort of bite to get things correct. But look, I'm really impressed with this. I think as a car that's adapted to an ICE platform, it has a couple of little spatial and packaging compromises, but all in all, feels like really quite a well-equipped electric SUV. And I think the fact that you are getting all the equipment and the power on offer has a lot of appeal. The drivetrain, you know, everyone does think of that 0 to 100 time, but for me, it's the rolling acceleration and the tuning of the controls that really define the electrified GV70. You can just roll on power effortlessly. Beyond that kind of 0 to 60 marker, which is sort of the more explosive side of the ledger, it feels more sprightly than it does all out explosive, but that's how a lot of electric cars are. But yeah, it just feels like a really under-stressed and well-metered drivetrain. I think it's worked really well in all conditions today. And you know, if you start buying into the EV side of the ledger, like, yeah, it does feel like a really calm, tranquil space. And on a winding mountain pass, without the engine noise, the gearbox doing its thing, and all the other kind of things that are happening inside the cabin, this really does feel like a nice, serene driving experience.
Weight aside, our only other gripe is the steering, which feels artificial in its weighting and lacks the feedback expected from a sportier SUV. As far as range goes, our initial test suggests 350 kilometres is a more realistic figure from a full charge. The Electrified GV70 is backed by a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty in Australia, plus a separate 8-year warranty on the battery. Servicing is complimentary and buyers have the option of a 5-year ChargeFox subscription or the installation of an 11 kilowatt AC home charger.
The Electrified GV70 is a welcome addition to the Genesis range. Now sure, it imposes a huge pricing penalty over the existing petrol and diesel GV70 options, but of the 5 different models on offer now, I think this one really does impart the biggest sense of luxury and occasion. It's smooth, it's nice to drive, it's not really a sports car, but it's a great all-rounder with technology and safety to match. If you can justify the spend and you don't mind trying something new, I think this really does deserve to be cross-shopped against rivals from Audi, BMW and Mercedes-Benz.